I want you to try something different. And what I want you to try is to persuade conservatives and persuade liberals the way that they want to be persuaded, using the language that they like to use. Now, you'll often find whenever there's crosstalk, liberals are trying to talk to conservatives or conservatives to liberals. And you see this in the comments of every politically oriented Facebook post, opinion even. It's chaos back and forth, and it ends up mudslinging and insult hurling very quickly, and it becomes about how bad the other person is, right? When I am challenged by liberals, by leftists, usually the more radical ones who are opinionated, they don't argue against what I say. They instead say, what Joshua really means when he says that is this, which makes him a terrible person. So they don't actually address what it is that I'm saying. They say, here's what he means by that. Therefore, he's a bad person, because that's what he meant, right? It's a sort of sleight of hand, straw man, Mott and Bailey tactic, whatever you want to refer to it as. But that got me to think, what would it look like to use liberal persuasion on liberals to move them to conservative points? And now we just realize that's how you unlock the path to going from a liberal to a conservative. So think about this, for example. What if you're familiar with The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt? Liberals tend to value things like fairness and the prevention and mitigation of hurt, being hurt, hurting others. This is why all left-wing pet causes use the language around discrimination, being hurt, hurting other people, elevating those. You might even be familiar with how there's some overlap in more liberal Catholics will use the phrase social justice a lot, as in there are these people who have been downtrodden in society. And then they use biblical language like, he who humbles himself will be exalted. And well, these are people who are pretty humbled in life, and so we want to exalt them. It's only fair, right? It's a sort of language of fairness, and that they've been hurt, and we need to raise them up. And so this is why there's Pride Month, is that there's a population of people who have been hurt unfairly because of something they can't change about themselves. So they have been mistreated, discriminated against, maligned, stereotyped, therefore hurt. That's not fair, so we need to raise them up. That is the liberal perspective on the matter of Pride Month. Catch that? Okay. Every topic is like that for them. So when they say things like protect trans kids, a conservative has a completely different understanding of what I just said. But a liberal thinks, oh, protect kids who are in a vulnerable population, in that this population tends to be discriminated against, bullied, mistreated, etc., and otherwise hurt of something they can't change. Well, that's not fair. So you see how that's like the sort of conservatives are, I think, therefore I am. Liberals are, I feel, therefore I am. That's what you tend to see. Conservatives are masculine, even women, which is why, in order for there to be polarity in relationships, the manly men of Republicans and conservative circles are extremely manly and masculine, dominant, in order to create that polarity, right? So Republican women are generally more masculine than liberal men. Do you understand that? Therefore, in order for it to work, liberal women need to be extremely masculine, because it's an inversion of that dynamic, because those men are not going to become more masculine on that side of the aisle. So they have to create that polarity. Well, somebody has to do something. So the women will become men, right? So in like a liberal and conservative marriage, the husband is the wife and the wife is the husband. You'll notice this. But you don't see that generally in Republican circumstances and in circles. So I feel, therefore I am. And they emote. That they don't necessarily like use logic or critical thought. They emote. And it's all based on what emotions are rising up. So you'll notice that these discriminated groups or these oppressed classes, from a left-wing perspective, they respond to them like they're children, like they're their fur babies. It's a way of anthropomorphizing and equalizing. It's equalizing behavior, treating animals like they're people and treating people like they're children. So think about illegal immigrants. Oh, they're so poor and they're so destitute and limited to work so hard, and you just had such a hard time. They treat them like they're national orphans or something, like they're geographically orphaned. And this works really well on, let's say, those who have a natural motherly instinct. This works really well to manipulate them. It does. But then when you think about the policies that you need to enforce in order to create a sense of fairness, is extremely unfair. This is why Yaron Brook always says equal is unfair. And that's what conservatives understand. Conservatives understand that there's hierarchy, that there's order, that there's tradition, and that without these things, without rules, without, very simply put, without fences, all manner of unwanted things happen that get in, that protect those who would otherwise be hurt. This is where I feel something is missing from conservative persuasion that they could use in order to persuade liberals to their way of thinking and turn leftists into right-wingers like me. It would be something like this. When you talk about rules, laws, what you value, fences, walls, policies, you describe them in the language of fairness and hurt. Those are the liberal values. When you talk to liberals, talk about your beliefs and your views using that sort of language. It's like speaking in their language. They may not agree with you, but they'll get it. So instead of them feeling like you're in opposition, that you're just a bad person. So when you say build the wall, what you really mean is keep out brown people, which makes you racist, right? This is what liberals do. What you could say instead is you can talk about the truly vulnerable populations who are most hurt. So you think about your kids at school. When you double or triple the number of students in a school, that decreases by 200 to 300% the amount of attention that your child needs or your child receives from the teacher. You talk about how these open border policies, that means anyone can get in. Well, that's like leaving your front door open and not even having someone there watching to see who's going to come in. It's not even having a door. Like you have a door in your house, right? Yeah. Well, imagine having no door and the door is always open. Anything could come in. Anyone could come in. Imagine your kids are home with babysitter and the door's wide open. Anybody could come in late at night. How would you feel about that? Well, that would mama bear instinct. So what we want to do is we want to speak to the natural mama bear instinct of the female liberal because it's there, especially if she's a mother. I want you to test this and see. You don't have to push, you don't have to convince, you don't have to influence. I want you to try this. When you talk about rules, policies, which like rules are not fair. So talk about how rules protect from hurt, the vulnerable. Now, there's no population more vulnerable than children, of course. So you can focus on how you believe in protecting the children, taking care of the children. And by the way, hurting children is one of the ways that liberal women become extremely conservative. They become far-right nationalists. You start talking about hurting kids, and you help them understand the extent of that hurt, and they will go crazy, right? People talk about this radical right-wing extremist organization called Moms for Liberty. Well, no, they just recognize these mothers, Tina Descovich and Tiffany Justice. They and others noticed that children were being poorly treated at school by teachers during all of the pandemic shenanigans. Kids were being hurt. They said no. And the natural response from people who don't know any better or who those are convinced is that this is a far-right extremist organization, right? Okay, sounds about right. So you may not convince people to take your opinion, But the liberals you're talking to, you know what you'll persuade them using this line of thinking? I suspect you'll persuade them to view you as a good person, or as a well-meaning but maybe misguided person, or someone whose heart is in the right place. That is the first step to actual persuasion, by the way, real persuasion. Now, this is interpersonal persuasion one-on-one. What you tend to see work more with mass persuasion is you need resonance with as many people on your side as possible. See, the side that wins is the side that is better organized, meaning galvanized, meaning dense, with people of vision and excitement and passion. So often, the side who's better at attacking, the person who's best at attacking the other side, is going to be the leader. So this, what I'm talking about right now, is a one-on-one persuasion approach. It's a one-on-one persuasion technique. Understand this. I want you to try it this week. Let me know in the comments. Come back. Let me know in the comments how it works for you. If you're conservative, Republican, or right wing in any country, really, not just the United States, again, speak to a liberal about why you support any given policy, because how, number one, it's now fair, and more importantly, or just as importantly, depending on the issue, it keeps vulnerable people, the most vulnerable people, from getting hurt. Try it.